A work requirement gets the green light from Washington, but how much difference will it make? A yellow light from the Highway Department to Central Arkansas. Will the blue light of a few days ago flicker in Arkansas? But first, with some red lights already flashing, is there any way yet to know how tax reform will reshape Arkansas pocketbooks? Arkansas Week, next.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. The politics of Medicaid, highways, and politics. Our roundtable begins in a moment. First, tax reform and Arkansas, with competing versions in play and uncertain guidance from the White House. What, if anything, can we divine about the impact on Arkansas, individuals and businesses? Our guest is Brian Thompson of Little Rock, a CPA who's currently president of the National Society of Accountants. We now, Brian, have a Senate version outlined, or at least what sources say is a Senate version of tax bill, and Ways and Means over on the House side hasn't even completed work on its version. Can we say with any certainty at all what's likely to come out of this session of Congress?
Currently, no. The Senate has, as we read just a moment ago, it has very brief information in regard to what could be included in their bill. Currently, the House bill is a bill that's still in committee. I think we need to point out that, as we discuss this over the next few minutes, that this is simply a proposed bill. It's still in the House committee. It has not passed the House. And so eventually, when the Senate does propose their bill, there will have to be a reconciliation of those bills before it goes to the president. But currently, no, there's really no way we will know what will be the final product.
Still fairly early, very early anyway, in the sausage making process.
Certainly early.
Looking at the two as we know them now, what's most likely to impact the middle income Arkansan, adjusted for Arkansas wages and incomes, with the House or the Senate bill? Which offers the better deal?
Well, again, the Senate bill has very limited information so far.
Yeah.
We can speak to the House bill because there's a little bit more detail, 420 some pages of detail in that bill. So the House bill, substantially reduces the number of tax brackets that we have, down to 4 brackets. As I understand it, the proposed Senate bill could have 7 brackets, which is an increase, to what the House has. Furthermore, the House bill, it increases the standard deduction. So when we're talking about middle America or middle income Arkansans, doubling the standard deduction would likely prevent or reduce the ability to itemize their deductions. It would simplify their tax situation a bit. Don't know how the Senate proposed bill, if it's going to propose an increase to the standard deduction or not. The House bill further eliminates the personal exemption as a deduction. Now, the effect of middle America there is homes with children. That exemption is a reduction of income of around $4,000 per exemption, which includes, mom and dad that's on the return and any children, $4,000 per item. Don't know how the Senate will propose, that reduction. Now, in the House bill, they offset that reduction of personal exemption with some increases in tax credits. For instance, the child tax credit. If you have a child that's under the age of 17 years old, that tax credit now goes to $1,600 instead of $1,000. So that extra $600 is a means to offset the loss of that personal exemption deduction. Furthermore, there's a brand new thing proposed in the House bill that we just don't physically have in our current tax structure, and that is a $300 tax credit for the taxpayer and any non-child dependent that's claimed on the return. So dad on a return gets a $300 tax credit. Mom on the tax return, if we're dealing with a married filing joint, they get a $300 tax credit. And if we have an adult dependent that's claimed on the return, they also get a $300 tax credit. Again, these are an effort to offset the loss of that personal exemption deduction.
Yeah.
That currently, it's a brand new thing, and again has been instituted because of the changes, the radical changes that are in the bill.
Yeah, you mentioned itemization, and a big one for a lot of homeowners is mortgage interest. Yet, the Senate bill, as we understand it at this hour anyway, would hold the $1 million cap.
That's correct. Now, the effect on most Arkansans with the House bill as proposed, what the House bill does is it says any mortgage that's entered into after November of 2017.
A certain date.
Yeah, there's a specific date that's listed in there. You'd be limited to deduct the mortgage interest on the first $500,000 of that loan. My thought for most Arkansans, the clients that I deal with, they don't have mortgages that exceed $500,000. Now there are some Arkansans
Sure.
that will have mortgages in excess of that. So that threshold for a vast portion of mid-income Arkansans is probably not going to be a big factor to them. The other proposals as far as itemized deductions with not the ability to deduct your state and local income tax, that's a bigger thing. That's a bigger item since Arkansas is an income tax paying state. They would lose that itemized deduction, as well as another proposal in the House bill is the non-ability to deduct medical expenses. And when you talk about the elderly, those tax returns for the elderly, they will typically have medical expenses that exceed that 7.5% or 10% threshold of income. So that could be a loss of deduction for an elderly individual. And some individuals that are have the unfortunate situation to have a lot of medical expenses
Sure.
in a year.
Yeah. Speculative though it is, and admittedly so. You've got a House version, you've got a Senate version. Looking at the economics of Arkansas households to the best of your ability, would most Arkansans stand to benefit from from whatever is likely to emerge, given the parameters of the House bill and the Senate bill?
Right. So, currently there's not a Senate bill, so we need to make sure we have that clear.
Well, we're working on leaks.
Yeah. So, I can speak to the House bill in that, some various scenarios that I've ran, most Arkansans would come out in a better situation, in better light with income tax with the House bill. I don't know enough about a proposed Senate bill. For example, we don't know what the spread of these 7 tax brackets are. So, it's very difficult to assess what tax effect that would be. There's just not enough information that's been leaked out thus far.
Yeah. Now, on the matter of small business, which accounts for, I think, probably most of the commerce in Arkansas, notwithstanding Walmart and Dillard's and all of the Tyson and all the big, you have an awful lot of small businesses out there. Mm-hmm. Any sense at all of where the Congress is going to go on that?
Well, the House bill proposes some pretty substantial changes to taxes as it relates to small business. One is they propose a flat tax to businesses that are taxed as C corporations on small businesses that are typically what we call pass-through entities, right. Which the individual business does not pay the tax, but instead the owner, the shareholder, the partner of that business pays the tax. There are some caps on what that tax would be. It would be a maximum of 25% on a portion of that income. If you were in a personal service business like an attorney, doctor, engineer, consultant, that type, You wouldn't have that luxury of that max tax. You would be subjected to income tax at what we call the ordinary tax rates. It just shows up as regular income. So, you know, a high income earner, you could be taxed at 39.6%, you know, as far as on that income.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's other things that are in this bill that affect small business. We have a bonus depreciation provision in here where it allows a business to deduct 100% of the costs of their fixed assets that have a recovery life of 20 years or less. Now, typically for most small businesses, we would think of that's more in the line of equipment that they would purchase. Now, bonus depreciation is not new. We've had bonus depreciation for several years now. What is new is that the previous rule on bonus depreciation, it was only good for new assets. This provision brings in new and used assets. So a business, being price conscious, could go out there and buy a used piece of equipment, use bonus depreciation to get the full deduction in this year. So, you know, that can be significant for many small businesses.
We have to end it there because we're out of time for this segment. I know you will continue to monitor. I strongly suspect we'll have you back.
Oh, I appreciate that. My pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Yes.
And we'll be back in just a moment. And we're back with the panel, but of course it also involves money. Heather Yates is here from the UCA Political Science faculty. Steve Bronner, a syndicated columnist. Ernie Dumas, an independent journalist. And thanks to everybody for coming in. Let's start with Medicaid because the Hutchinson administration, as have several other governors, have sought, long desired, particularly since the White House changed hands, permission to amend the state Medicaid programs. And on Monday, Ernie, we got, the administration and several states got permission to do that in terms of one of the things they wanted to do.
Well, they said they were going to. I don't think they've formally approved the waivers for Arkansas or Kentucky or any of those other.
Doors open.
Perhaps a dozen states, but they indicated that they were going to approve those waivers. And I think nobody is surprised about that. I think it's been clear all year long that whatever any state wanted to do to tamper with the Medicaid program or any other facet of the Affordable Care Act would likely be, if affected in a negative way, would likely be approved by the Trump administration. So it did say that they were going to approve the waivers for states that sought to impose a work requirement for Medicaid. This is for the expanded Medicaid for adults. So that would, and they also asked for another thing, and that would be they would end the Medicaid eligibility for all those people between the poverty line and 138% of poverty line. You know, those people, individuals earning above $11,800 a year would be ineligible for participation in the Medicaid program. So they indicated they were going to approve that. And the other aspect of it for Arkansas, which might be have a more serious impact in Arkansas, was the request that they allow them to cut off that beyond the work requirement, cut off people between 100 and 138%. And but the governor has said that those people would be all right. They wouldn't lose their health insurance because they could probably go over and buy a policy on the regular exchange. So that's been their explanation. I think the estimate was back in the spring when the governor proposed it and the legislature approved these waivers, asking for the waivers, that it would affect maybe 60,000 of the perhaps 300,000 people in the Medicaid program in Arkansas, the expanded Medicaid program. But their argument has been that wouldn't really affect them because they could go ahead and buy policies, and the federal government would pay for it. The idea behind it, I think, all along was that it would save the state money, because the state has to pitch in currently 5% of the cost of the Medicaid treatment of all these patients. And if they shifted over, if they abolished that and people would go over and buy it, then the federal government would bear all the cost, and the state wouldn't have to bear any. So the state would save how many millions of dollars a year in matching payments. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes, because they haven't remarked about that. But I suspect that the federal government, the Trump administration, will approve that waiver as well. But that may be down the line later this month, or perhaps in December, when they act on that. Regardless, I think there'll probably be a lawsuit.
Yeah, there's
maybe
litigation
more than one
pending.
lawsuit challenging the authority of the states and the Health and Human Services Department to approve those waivers, whether the law anticipates you can grant waivers in those areas or not. So we will have to see about that later on.
Highways. An exchange of correspondence this past week, Steve, regarding the super controversial 30 crossing project in central Arkansas. What is the Highway Commission, Highway Department, wants something, and the Metroplan, the Council of Local Governments in Central Arkansas, isn't quite sure that it likes the idea.
Well, the Highway Department wants Metroplan to change 2 words in its 5-year plan from capacity. They want the Highway Department wants it to be capacity improvements. It's currently operational improvements. Now, the difference between those 2 words, capacity versus operational, would be capacity means you can put more cars on there. And that's been the big controversy about the 30 crossing is the whole goal to put more cars on, or is it to have other considerations about quality of life and those kinds of things? Now, the department says this is a federal regulation. It has to say this or we don't get the money. And that would be their argument. And Scott Bennett, the head of the department, has said that that's what we're trying to do. Metroplan, if they don't go through with that change, then it could delay $232 million worth of projects in Central Arkansas. So now we just got to wait for the next meeting and see if they actually do it.
Carrot or stick, or a combination here?
Potentially, possibly. Could be that the Highway Department is just trying to make sure it complies with the letter of the law. I cannot say what the motivations of any one person is, but it's about changing 2 words, or even really just 1 word.
Yeah. Is this really about 2 words, Ernie?
Well,
it is, but is there more?
Legally, it's about 2 words. Whether it goes beyond that, I'm not sure. You have to be a little suspicious because of the, this is a very highly controversial thing, particularly in Little Rock. A good part of the city and organizations like neighborhood associations, downtown people, are strongly opposed to that I-30 crossing project, which is going to be a massive concrete highway, much larger than the current Interstate 30 crossing through Little Rock and North Little Rock. And they see it destroying neighborhoods and harming the quality of life in downtown Little Rock. And that's the big argument between those elements and the City Hall in Little Rock and the Chamber of Commerce, which kind of goes along with the State Highway Department plan. And Metroplan is kind of in the middle. They've got to pass on all of this stuff. And so both sides are trying to push Metroplan to move in their direction. And so this is an effort, I think, by the Highway Department to push Metroplan to more expediently embrace the I-30 crossing plan. Who knows? We'll have to see about that. But the Metroplan, I guess, in the coming days, will have to decide whether it's going to accede to the Highway Department's wishes or not. But this battle is we're going to be hearing about this battle for, I'd say, in the next
2 days.
8 to 10 years.
Heather?
And something I'd like to add to everything else that's been discussed about this is in the larger picture, I think this comes down to a battle between 2 agencies, and can one agency unilaterally pressure another agency to do something? But the way it's framed, yeah, when they're yanking there's a lot of money involved here, and when they're threatening funding, we're going to yank your funds to try to get what we want out of that over the phraseology of 2 words that are important. I think that's going to be the core question in these legal battles. Can one organization, one agency unilaterally suppress or demand around, as your word, the carrot of funding? They might. We'll see. But in the larger view, I think that's going to be a question that a lot of this dispute pivots around.
Well, over the decades, the Highway Department has flexed its muscle on more than one occasion, and often to the frustration of the very governor who appointed that individual commissioner.
Yeah, then we remember it goes back to a similar battle back many years ago. Steve, you and I remember it, back when when the state and the Federal Highway Administration proposed, and the city of Little Rock, this massive highway structure through the heart of Little Rock, which became the Mills Expressway, and similar kind of dispute over that, its effect on neighborhoods in East Little Rock and Central Little Rock. And that battle carried on, legal battle in federal court carried on for 7 years before they were finally able to start on the Mills Expressway. My guess is we'll see something similar to that in this case.
All but the reddest of the red Republicans are acknowledging that last Tuesday was a pretty good day for the blues. Heather?
So,
and the question is, can any of this, what does this mean anything at all in Arkansas?
Right, which is how I'm looking at what Tuesday's results mean locally. So in terms of the Democrats and the DNC are certainly feeling pretty happy about what happened on Tuesday. But if we take a look at the implications on Tuesday in Arkansas, Arkansas is still relatively, unchanged by, I think, what happened on Tuesday. Because when we take a look at the University of Arkansas poll was released on Monday, and we're seeing that the public opinion toward our public officials, namely our senators and governor, are strong. Governor Hutchinson in the U of A poll is hovering around 62%, so he's very popular. When we're looking at our congressional delegation, our senators, Bozeman and Cotton, particularly Cotton, is popular, and he's becoming increasingly so. He's also increasingly gaining visibility within the Republican Party. Just this month, the New Yorker has run a story on Tom Cotton, so there's a lot of Arkansas pride that is, I think, underscoring some of the public opinion that was captured in that poll. And Tom Cotton is also seen as the agent that can build bridges between the warring factions in the Republican Party, so he's getting some very favorable press. In terms of issues within Arkansas, the economy is still playing as a principal issue of concern, although a lot of Arkansans in that poll indicated that they feel very confident and strong about the local economy and the direction that the state is going, even though in a few weeks earlier, the Talk Business and Politics poll indicated that Arkansans think that the direction of America is still maybe going on the wrong track. So in terms of what's happening on Tuesday, the blue sweep, I don't see the blue sweep taking over Arkansas in 2018 for a couple of reasons. The Democratic Party in Arkansas doesn't really have a strong enough recruitment pipeline, so there's not candidates stepping in to challenge the House congressional delegation. The only district that could possibly maybe be competitive is the 2nd district, but still French Hill is sitting in pretty good position. So overall, the aggregate opinion of Trump is still strong, even though Trump's public opinion has dropped a little bit in the state. Trumpism without Trump still might play really well here in Arkansas, and so that's at least the global view of the impact of Tuesday and how it'll play out in the next year.
I went back and looked at the numbers from last November, and guys, each of our 4 U.S. representatives won by an average of 10. They ran 10 percentage points ahead of Mr. Trump, so they've got to fall a long way. Mr. Trump would have to fall a really long way for it to have much impact, it would seem anyway.
Well, he's fallen some. His approval rating in Arkansas, according to one of those polls, is around 47%, and what did he get? 60-something percent of the vote?
62 or 3.
62 or 63% in Arkansas. So we're still considerably above the rest of or most of the country. I think his national polls show him somewhere around 35 to 38% approval rating, and negative ratings of up around 60%, the highest of any, the highest negative ratings and the lowest positive ratings of any president at this stage of the presidency in modern times, certainly since World War II. So he's suffered some, and I think Democrats in Arkansas, as those Democrats in other states, have to be slightly encouraged. But I agree, it still looks pretty grim for Arkansas running in major races in Arkansas. It could be slightly encouraging to people, the Democrats, to get more people running for legislative seats and for the 4 congressional seats, and I think we'll probably see some Democrats running for nearly all of those seats. But it would not be terribly encouraging that they're going to make a sweep. I don't think that's much of a possibility that
Yeah, Steve?
anywhere in the South that there would be that kind of sweep.
Yeah.
How it could affect Arkansas is if its delegation is now in the minority in the House in the next election. The Democrats have to flip 24 seats. Look at the past midterm elections: Reagan, Clinton, Obama. Big shifts in the first midterm election could happen again next year.
All right, got to end it there because we're out of time. Thanks to everyone for coming. And as always, thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.